what are some of the key priorities and strategic goals that you're currently focused on at Verizon?
It's constantly evolving and changing as new technologies are coming into play and new regulations are being published. So
today's guest is Scott Forbes. He is the Senior Analyst for Drone Safety and Standards at Verizon. A former US Army Blackhawk maintenance test pilot, he brings over 25 years of military aviation experience to his role.
I believe drones can do much of what helicopters have done in different environments.
Can you elaborate on how the drones are being used to reestablish communication networks, after events like hurricanes?
Part of the disaster response is our tethered drone. We call it a Hawk, high altitude wireless kinewatt. Think of it very much like it's a cell site on wings. So we set up the Hawk as a way to let our first responders communicate.
What are some of those key safety protocols and standards that Verizon has implemented for its drone operations?
We've got pillars of safety that we say our program is built upon. So we haven't had any damage to any property or any people injured as a result of our drone operations. And that's over thousands of flights and thousands of hours.
This is my favorite question. I love this question. So what is perhaps something controversial or against the norm about the drone space? Something that isn't typically done right now, but you believe should be?
Okay, that's a good question.
Before we begin, do you want to know what separates struggling drone programs from those generating millions in ROI? Grab our free Enterprise Drone Program Maturity Assessment. It's a $2,500 value that reveals your maturity stage, your top 3 quick wins, and your full growth roadmap. And for advanced strategy, sign up for the paid pro version of the Drone Strategist newsletter on Substack. All links are in the description. Welcome to another episode of Do You Know Drones, the podcast where we explore the latest trends, challenges, and innovations in the drone industry. I'm your host, Jason San Souci, and I'm excited to welcome Scott Forbes, Senior Analyst, Drone Safety and Standards at Verizon, to the show. For those new to the podcast, Do You Know Drones aims to uncover the real-world applications of drone technology and provide actionable insights for our listeners. We've had some fantastic guests in the past, and this one's not going to be any different. We've had Isaac Pache, Bobby Sakaki, Nate Ernst, and today we're diving into the world of telecommunications and disaster response with one of the leading experts in the field. Scott, welcome to the show. I've been doing some research on your background, and I'm impressed by your work in overseeing drone safety, standards, and the economic and operational impact of drone technology at Verizon.
Thank you, Jason, and thank you for having me on today. I share great company of people that have been here before me, so it's truly an honor to have this opportunity to share a little bit of my knowledge with you and learn from you and the other people you've interviewed as well.
Really appreciate that. Well, let's get started. I love stories, right? I love people's journeys. Could you share a little bit about your journey into the drone industry and what led you to Verizon?
Absolutely, I can. Well, I started off in the military as a manned pilot. So I was a Blackhawk maintenance test pilot for 25 years in the US Army. That was the basis of my knowledge in aviation, and it's truly what brought me to where I am today in appreciating the value of having a robust safety management system, having standards and policies that are across an enterprise. Obviously, in the Army, it's a much bigger organization, but we kind of dress it down. After my 25 years in the Army, I did pick up this job in Verizon, first working as a data analyst. That was my entry level position, but I saw a position in our drone team that was very attractive to me after about a year and a half working for Verizon. And I knew it was a position that I could use my unique skill set in more valuable terms. So I applied to the job, got picked up as the Senior Analyst, Drone Safety and Standards. And since then, 2021, that was kind of a breakthrough year for us with when we first started really developing our safety management system, running quarterly safety meetings, and tracking all of our safety performance indicators and going on to track our return on investment through KPIs.
That is really exciting. So you talked a little bit about this, but what are some of the key priorities and strategic goals that you're currently focused on at Verizon?
Sure. It's constantly evolving and changing, and as new technologies are coming into play and new regulations are being published. So it feels like every year is a little bit different on this journey. This year for us has really been a lot about modernizing our fleet. So doing a bit of a fleet refresh, if you will. This program's been active for almost a decade. So some of our aircraft are quite dated now. So we looked at which of our teams are the highest performing, really. It's to set a precedent for who would get the newest and best equipment that we can field them. And with that, training is a big part of it. So we not only wanted to give the best equipment, but we wanted to make sure that we provided really world-class training to our engineers who are out there in the field. Much of our training up until that point had been done virtually. So now we do an in-person training with the fielding of those new systems, very similar to what people that have been in the military might have seen. We call it a mobile train-the-trainer, where we actually go and we take some of their top and most experienced pilots, train them up, and then arm them with the ability to also be instructors in those platforms that we're fielding. That's one of our initiatives. Another one is really in increasing capabilities integration, especially with these newer platforms. So pulling in things like hyper precise location using our network and the GNSS stations that are affiliated with that network. And this has been wonderful in getting the centimeter level accuracy that we really want to have when we're doing the surveys of our towers. And then demonstrating internally to our company the value of the drone program at Verizon. So you may not know, we've got 200 pilots. That number will fluctuate left and right as people come and people go. And almost 500 different drones. But again, that ebbs and flows as well. But with that quantity of drones, it's still not enough. We still have engineers out there who their primary mission with drones is using that drone as a tool. But if it was my world, every one of them would have that drone as a tool because there is a measurable return on investment with that technology.
And we're going to get into that. Very interesting. We'll definitely get into that later. Definitely want to dive into ROI and a little bit more about your program. So right now, your program is like you're heavily involved in disaster response, network restoration, inspections. Can you elaborate on how the drones are being used to reestablish communication networks, after events like hurricanes?
Absolutely. Yeah, we have a team, a Verizon frontline team and a Merit team. They're two teams that are really dedicated to disaster response. They're constantly poised as well as all of our other engineers. It's a voluntary to be on a what's called a DIRT team, which is an incident response team. With that, most of those teams, drones are heavily integrated into the tasks that they're trained to do when they go out to the field. So one of the first things is you can imagine they're going into an area that may not be permissive. So prior to the disaster event, roads are fine. There was no flooding. There were no obstacles. So we use those drones for rapid mapping, not only for ourselves. We also provide that product to some of the government agencies that may be on site. We often find that we're the first ones that are there that actually have the capability to do rapid mapping. And that frontline team is very adept. Some of the people on the team are prior military that really were in the GIS space, and they know the systems, they know the technology and the software they're using. So that rapid mapping goes into also letting us know, can we get to where we need to go to reestablish our network connectivity, and what are we going to need when we get there? So being able to reach out and look at the terrain that we're going into is wonderful. Or if we can't get there, we can get a bird's eye view with our drones. So that's been incredibly valuable. Another part of the disaster response is our tethered drone. So we call it a Hawk. It's a high altitude wireless kinewatt, or you could say kit if you want, but kinewatt is what we actually titled it. But the tethered drone, actually think of it very much like it's a cell site on wings. So we can develop once the network is getting reconstructed, until that time, we don't have any way to really communicate. So we set up the Hawk as a way to let our first responders communicate, and also those communities that have been affected. It's a wonderful system. It's actually high visibility. So I like to think once we put that up in the sky for those communities and people that are there that might need to plug in back to home, they're going to see something that they can kind of walk towards that's a beacon and get connectivity with those they love and that might need an update.
That is quite amazing. And yeah, I would probably do the same thing, just like taking my phone and be like, "Hey, so okay, can you hear me now?" Sorry, bad joke. So, I know. So let's talk about 5G and AI, right? These are two very, very, very hot topics going, for the last probably 5, 10 years, and going into the foreseeable future. I know that Verizon is integrating 5G connectivity and AI-powered data platforms into its drone operations. How does both of these technologies work together to enhance situational awareness and decision making for first responders?
Sure. Just so you know, at this point in time, we're just using 4G LTE because there are FCC limitations on airborne use of the 5G spectrum for drone ops. So, that being said, we do have airborne LTE operations using our 4G network. And what we believe to be true is that the network is going to be a force multiplier in the drone industry. So, with that being said, for command and control, so as we come up on this part 108 and we're trying to figure out how we're going to control these aircraft at distance, we have a proven network that we can do command and control from thousands of miles away using our network to control drones. So that's one. That's a big one, the command and control. The other would be real-time situational awareness. So actually video streaming what that drone is seeing to operations centers or people that are on the ground so that they can know what is the real picture at this time? And you see that a lot in a drone as a first responder space. That's the big push right now on that real-time video situational awareness. But that's really, to me, that's one of the most exciting paths forward. I always talk to anyone who's in public safety or police department as a first responder. This technology is there and it's not been implemented to the scale that it could be, and it's a low cost investment. It's the training and the people that are able to do it, which I think is lacking at this point in time.
I completely agree. I think education, training, those are all things that this industry needs more of. And speaking of which, this industry needs more of safety standards, specifically standards. What are some of those key safety protocols and standards that Verizon has implemented for its drone operations?
Yeah, we've got pillars of safety that we say our program is built upon. So, as you can imagine, training is a big piece of that. Training the way that we do things. Also, the policies that revolve around drone operations within our company. Those policies consist of things like corporate policy statements, but also a drone handbook, which is much like standard operating procedures you might have in the military, making sure that all of our people are doing it the way we want them to do it, and putting those right assets into place. Another is a pre-flight checklist on the safety side. This goes into our standards, but all of our pilots are trained to use a pre-flight checklist prior to every flight on site. And for them, that brings in the basics of, do I have the weather to fly? Am I physically capable of flying? Have I done my I am safe checklist per the FAA? So really important. SMS, I can't kind of stomp my foot enough to. I think every enterprise drone program needs to start with a good, robust safety management system. We did get SBAO certified to help us on that path when we first stood up our safety management system and to get an external look into, are we doing this the right way and the way it should be? But now that it's established, a big part of it is having safety performance indicators. So really monitoring our operations and our flights to see, okay, what kind of mishaps or incidents are we having? And much like many other aviation enterprises, we allow our pilots to report. I'd rather know who it is so I can get a good root cause analysis into what might have happened, but we also give them an opportunity to do an anonymous report if they just want to bring up a safety issue that they've seen or that they've encountered. And we take that data, that information, we do root cause analysis, and then quarterly we sit down with all of our pilots and we talk about all the things that have happened as far as mishaps and incidents and what we see on our automated safety performance indicators that we are monitoring. And those are things like, did you fly further away than we believe you could still see the drone? So we have a metric for how far has the drone flown away from you, or what did your battery percentage get down to? Much like a fuel reserve in an aircraft, we want to make sure they're landing with at least 20% battery and taking off with 100% battery if possible. So keeping an eye on those things and actually letting our pilots know if we see the trend line going in the wrong direction has been incredibly valuable to ensure that we haven't had any damage to any property or any people injured as a result of our drone operations. And that's over, you know, thousands of flights and thousands of hours.
So I'm going to go slightly off script.
Yes, of course.
uh, I'm curious. So we're going to talk about certification. I'm curious, does Verizon certify their remote pilots? So I know there's Part 107, right?
Mm.
I'm talking internal because certifications are essentially managed by organizations. The
Yes, of
only
course.
certifying body that matters is the organization. So does Verizon certify their drone pilots?
Yes, we do. That's a big part of where I sit within the company and within our teams is going and training our pilots. So not only are they going through the Part 107, that's the first and honestly the hardest hurdle for people that are interested in becoming, UAS pilots in Verizon. Once they go through the Part 107 training and now we know, okay, this person's licensed by the FAA. We don't feel that that is enough. So we have our own internal certification process and training built in, what we call the Verizon way. And that is getting them familiar with all of those processes and procedures, the corporate policy statements, the flight management system, which we use to track not only the flights, but also those safety performance indicators. Uh, Once they've taken that training, then they get to go out and they fly a little bit. And the flying portion for the more basic drones, so I'm talking like a Parrot and Afi AI, we have them follow a drone maneuvers that is published by one of our vendors, some of their courseware, and then we'll have the pilot go out there, find a field, go fly, and then we can actually monitor those flights through our flight management system. So I can get a great detailed look of, okay, did they do their vertical and horizontal boxes in the sky, that we asked them to do? Have they done their circles that we're asking them to do? And more importantly, did they follow the processes and procedures? Once once they've kind of met all of those, you know, marks in the roadmap to becoming a pilot, then we certify them as a Verizon Remote Pilot in Command, and we issue them a certificate.
Well, that is outstanding. I love to hear that. It sounds like you guys are definitely setting up your program for success and your operators for success. So that is bravo. Let's go a little more strategic, a little more high level. Let's look at the overall ecosystem. Look at the overall industry. What role do you see industry wide standards and certification playing in the future of the UAS ecosystem?
Yeah, Jason, it's such a tough question, right? Because drones are used in so many different industries today. Uh, to s- I For one, the standards are not necessarily going to be the same, right? Because if the mission is different, then your standards and how you mitigate risk. So going back to that safety management system might be different, but inside, I think there still will be common standards that we can use industry wide. But we need to communicate and just determine, okay, what are those standards we're going to use to make sure that we do this safely, and communicate that to the FAA as well as we're doing it. But yeah, I'm a firm believer. Obviously, it's my job, safety and standards. That standards are the core element to making sure that we do these flight operations safely, and that our people know what those standards are. So I think it's important to collaborate, and get with our peers in the industry, and brainstorm. What are those common standards that we feel should be applied to avoid any incidents that might give us bad press, right? Because I want drones. Being a former helicopter pilot, I believe drones can do much of what helicopters have done in different environments. Not everything, that there's something to be said for manned aircraft always, and the adaptability that a manned aircraft has. But as we dip into this, all those missions that we did in helicopters, I mean, we can look on that for learning cases, can be standardized in the drone space as well. But if we step out of bounds and we do have a black eye because something happened, because we were not following standards or we were not following regulations, then that could set us back, right? Because now the public opinion of drones could shift, and public opinion drives a lot. I mean, look at what happened in New Jersey when suddenly there's drones flying around. In the video I've seen, they were all flashing and strobing, if they were flying at nighttime. So I suspect it was, it's people that know what they're doing. It's people that are following regulations, but that hysteria can come about pretty quickly if we're not doing things the right way.
100% correct. And oh, by the way, anything with lights on it that flies over New Jersey is a drone. Just so you know. It's Exactly. I see that on LinkedIn, like these posts like, this is a helicopter, this is an aircraft, this is this aircraft, this is a Piper Cub. Drone.
Yeah, but
So,
yes.
yeah. So I'm curious. So you discussed this at the beginning. I want to dive into this a little bit more because ROI is a big thing. It's a huge indicator of program success. How does Verizon measure the economic benefits and ROI of its drone program? This is a biggie.
Yeah, no, it is big, and, so for us, it was very important to capture of the major use cases that we are using drones for, how much are we saving when we use a drone as opposed to using a person to do the same task? And that could be savings in time, but also safety, that the safety factor, which is not as easily quantifiable. But we went back and we looked at, okay, if I want to have somebody climb this tower to look at one of my radio transmitters on the top of the tower, how much is that gonna cost me as far as, the launching a vehicle, launching a crew out there, and then getting up on the tower? And if I can do that with a drone, certainly the first time, because many times the first time is just a look of what is wrong, then right there, we've saved a significant amount of money, and we've quantified, certain use cases, that being one, which we would call a site survey, but also things like a microwave line of sight. We've got a plan on paper of where we're gonna, you know, put this microwave transmitter and a receiver. But sometimes that plan on paper and plan on, digital map recon won't show you that tree that's grown in the time between us being here or even a building. So being able to use drones and see, do we actually have that shot? And there are other companies that do that, but if we can do it internally, we will save the money of having to have someone else do it for us. So that's a big saving investment for us. And then avian inspections is another one. If you didn't know, our cell sites are very attractive to winged creatures. So again, it's you'd be surprised how much it costs to make sure that those birds' nests aren't causing you any problems. But being able to get in the sky at a safe standoff distance, so we absolutely do not want to disturb any birds that might be in there until we know what they are, or even if they're still there. A lot of times the nests, once we get there, are not no longer being used. But being able to use a drone for that from a safe distance away that we know we will not disturb them, it's been incredibly valuable too. But again, since we've had to contract for as many of these services, we know what it costs. And we had a team that really dug into the analytics of it, of how much do these use cases save us. So then it really comes back to, okay, how do I track it? Building that into our processes and procedures was a journey. We're at a pretty good place right now. But then we find, oh, we just did something new and different with drones. Like, how much did that save us? So it's a constantly evolving process. But I'd say that we have the big four pretty much figured out, and we've got a good method of tracking when those are being done by our engineers, so that the data's there. It makes it easy for us to tell our executives, okay, this is really how much we saved using drones this year, and why it's a worthwhile investment in the future.
And let me be clear, those big four have nothing to do with here's how many flights we had. Here's how long we were in the air. Here's like they were very much tied to outcomes.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and it's definitely not tied to how many flights we've had because as you know, we probably well, I know we do. We have just as many training flights, of our pilots maintaining currency on the aircraft as we do, doing one of our use cases when they're out there. So purely going off flights or time in the air would not necessarily tell us what was the return on investment. Interestingly enough, I talk about, valid how much has this saved you. The other part is haven't quantified is, that tether drone goes up and during a disaster response, and there is no monetary amount hinged on, how much did this make someone's life and job easier? It's a free service we're providing out there, but just the goodwill alone that, hey, Verizon's here, they're willing to help, when we're in our time of need. It's something that's, hard to really capture as far as a return on investment KPI.
Absolutely. And I think things like that aren't necessarily required to be tied to a KPI. The KPI makes sense, right? It's goodwill, it's showing up, it's being a good steward of technology and for your users and your customer base. So it's like that by itself makes sense, even if you can't put a percentage or a dollar amount or anything on it. I think that totally makes sense. Now, the other ones, the ones that had a previous way of doing business, and drones have altered that way of doing business. That difference, that is actually how you compute the ROI. So that totally makes sense. And you're right. Hard to make any sort of computation of, man, that just made someone feel good, safe, connected. Man, how do you quantify that? That's impossible. Like, there's no way to do that. But like, I think that's definitely something that absolutely makes sense. So
Yes.
now,
Okay.
our signature question. And I want you to get a little controversial, maybe a little against the norm. This is my favorite question. I love this question. So, what is perhaps something controversial or against the norm about the drone space? And you can even tie it directly to telecommunications that you'd be willing to share. Something that isn't typically done right now, but you believe should be.
Okay. That's a good question. Something that will have me internally pondering for a moment here. And just to be clear, I forgot to announce this at the beginning, but all opinions that I am expressing today are my own, don't necessarily reflect Verizon's opinions. Since you are asking me a controversial one, Jason, I guess something in my mind that kind of eats in my core sometime is we think of it more as a drone as a tool. Because we do that, we don't think of the fact that all of our commercial small UAS pilots are actually rated aviators. So I think there needs to be a shift in the mindset, not just for companies and enterprises, but also us as Part 107 pilots, of not thinking of oh, I've got this nice little tool, but thinking I am an aviator. I am taking an aircraft into the sky of varying shapes or sizes, and because of that, I need to think of this as an aviation operation. But from an enterprise level, I think we need to give it a little bit more than just putting a tool into someone's hand to use it. I think we also need to look at, well, do we have full-time employees that this is all they're focusing on? That they are the full-time employees and pilots for the company. Luckily, I'm at a company at Verizon where we do that. I'm one of the full-time pilots that actually oversees our program, and part of we have a Verizon drone use committee, which also has, our lawyers on it that also are monitoring what we're doing. But we have that focus, and where I think the value in those specialized, I think you should have both. You can have field engineers that's their primary job, and they do have drone as a tool. I can't expect them to be as proficient or fly as much as our full-time pilots, but those full-time pilots, because of their experience, because of their proficiency and oftentimes recency, those are the people that we can rely on to go into the newer, possibly more risky use cases. And even now we're on the cusp of hopefully Part 108 becoming a reality, going into the things like the beyond visual line of sight operations. That's not something that I would necessarily entrust to my average, beginner engineer pilot. So having full-time pilots, they can be armed to do that. They also can do other use cases, research and development around drones, because we certainly don't want to do something new with any of our platforms without first testing it in the hands of somebody that may be more proficient. So that would be if it was Scott's world for a day. Every enterprise company out there using drones would have some sort of full-time drone pilot on their staff, making sure that that program is set up safely in accordance with all the regulations and policies, and thinking through it with an aviator's mindset.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And that kind of brings us back to like 15 years ago when like everything was, even before Section 333, like there was every drone pilot that we hired to do anything was a actual aviator. Like they were a commercial pilot, not just a private pilot. They were commercial pilots. That has evolved over the last 15 years for sure. However, I appreciate the insight that
Sorry,
we should
Jason, I
have a
just lost
maybe not a full
my
return to
connection with
that.
you there for.
I don't think everyone that is doing this full time needs to be a commercial pilot, but I think you're absolutely correct. That aviation mindset needs to be there. Like, because it's different. It is different than just, I have passed my 107, I have been issued a drone, and now I can do something. Cool. And with a little training, you can do that. But you're right. There are use cases out there and expanding use cases. I say all the time that, man, they're scratching the surface on what these use cases are. Now that's a little bit of nightmare for KPIs and but it keeps R&D really busy. And I really appreciate that. And those use cases should be reserved for the aviation experts, the ones that really understand the technology, really have the time of the equipment, really live and breathe the safety pillars, and really understand in and out the SOPs and emergency procedure, everything. They get it all. They could recite chapter and verse of the SMS. Like, these are people that like you absolutely want doing the hard stuff. So I appreciate that. That is incredibly insightful. Scott, I mean, this has been just a very insightful conversation. I mean, thank you for sharing your expertise and experience with us.
Absolutely, Jason. Thank you for reaffirming some of what I believe from the moderately controversial topic of having full-time drone pilots on the staff in an enterprise.
My pleasure. I agree with it as well. I'll tell you what, that's it. That's all the time we have for today's episode of the Do Know Drones. Join us next time as we continue to explore the exciting world of drone technology. We'll see you next time. Bye now.